many people able to join this meeting. So welcome and thank you for making the effort to join. Please be aware that microphones and cameras for participants of the meeting have been disabled, but you have the Q&A and chat functions. They're open for you to post questions and make comments, which will be addressed at the conclusion of the slide presentation. So I note that the many people who are joining the meeting will have many questions, and I recommend that you choose your top or highest priority questions to ask at the conclusion of the slide pack. Today's meeting agenda is designed to help and inform you, and our panel is here to answer your questions. The panel will be taking you through the slide pack. Before we start the slide pack, we'll have a message from Mayor Davis in a moment. And the panel, the senior staff who are here online to provide information and answer questions. And that's our General Manager, Bernard Smith. If you can just say hello, Bernard.
Good afternoon, all.
Yes, that'd be great. Thanks. And Director Corporate and Community Service, Lindsay Woodland.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for your attendance this evening.
The Director of Place and Growth, Rihanna Sheridan.
Hi, everyone.
Thanks, Rihanna. And the Acting Director of Infrastructure Services, Anthony Camphorst. Are you there, Anthony?
Good evening, everyone.
And the Chief Financial Officer, Shagir Mohammed.
Hi, everyone.
So the purpose of the meeting is to overview Council's strategic plans and provide information on the proposed special rate variation and their options. Please show respect during this meeting by using appropriate language when you ask your questions or make a statement or a comment about your concerns. Thank you. And now I'd like to invite Mayor Davis to give us a message.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming online tonight. We did have a really large turnout at the Glen Innes Town Hall meeting last night, which was good to hear, where I did do an address. I won't do all of that address tonight, but there are a few things I just wanted to highlight for you, and a bit of clarification and a bit of understanding about what advocacy work as Mayor I've been doing to help address more broadly some of the financial challenges that councils are having across New South Wales. Certainly, up front, I want to say that this is a consultation. We are listening and we are adapting as we go, depending on the feedback from the community. And so it's really important that you do pose your questions, and also at the end of this session or before the 6th of June, when the consultation closes, that you go on to the Have Your Say portal and submit your feedback. That way it's all recorded and understood, collated, and everything will be considered going forward. So Council, as we are really committed to kind of learning and listening and doing better to meet the needs of our community. Our job at the moment is to deeply understand how we've got where we are and to look ahead. So we really need to have open eyes, open minds, and really a shared collective determination to solve some of our challenges. And as I said, they're not unique to Glen Innes 7 Council. We really do have a lot of potential in our community, and people really care about how our council runs and how our community has the facilities and services that it needs to lead a good life, basically. But as I said last night, like, local government is really no small task. It is really complex and it's heavily regulated. And more we're seeing more to do with less money. And that's certainly, as I said, the case for lots of New South Wales councils, and especially rural councils, because, you know, we're delivering the same services and types of infrastructure that the cities are, but we have a much smaller rate base to do that and to fund that. Over the last 12 months, financial sustainability has been a key focus for council. So that's like from the last term to this term. It has been a process that started over 12 months ago now. So really the work that we've been doing as the new council is to look at our strategic planning process, and that's something every new council needs to do, to really look at a holistic plan for the community strategic plan, the 4-year delivery program, what council will deliver against that plan, and the long-term financial plan, which is the detailed plan that looks at our financial sustainability based on a financial, very deep analysis around that through Morrison and Lowe, who are experts in that field. We've also put out a public exhibition, obviously, the operational plan, which is fairly moderate because it's before any potential SRV might be applied to enable additional projects. So we really are looking to shift from short-term fixes to long-term solutions. And this is the community strategic plan, especially, is based on, you know, what you've told us you want from our previous consultation with you. And that really sits around better roads, more reliable infrastructure, access to healthcare, housing, support for young people, and interestingly, a stable, sustainable council. So we've responded to those with those needs and those aspirations of yours to put together ambitious but realistic plans. And these will guide council staff and operations as to what they need to do going forward to deliver to your needs. There has been quite a lot of confusion out there, I've noticed, around grant-funded projects. The thing about grants is that they do allow us to deliver projects, whether they be roads or new infrastructure or community services, that we perhaps otherwise couldn't afford. But there is a flip side to that. And, you know, most of the funding comes from state and federal government, not always, but most of it. And it is tied to strict eligibility criteria and types of projects. So whilst we don't have to pay back the grant funded money, which is a common misperception, most of the time we actually have to do the work. So we have to pay up front and then wait for the reimbursement, which can take months. So this does put real pressure on council's cash flow and how we report our finances. And there'll be a bit more from Lindsay later on this. So they are a fantastic way to deliver more for the community, but they can be a short-term burden on our budget. So we're doing the best we can to balance that complexity and still bring, I guess, value and progress to Glen Innes 7 community. So that's why council are preparing, amongst other things which you'll hear about tonight in regard to cost-saving initiatives, etc., to consider a special rate variation in 2026. And just to be clear, we haven't made a decision yet. This is about putting some modelling and options in front of you, coming out and communicating that and consulting with you, and then looking at potentially tweaking those models or even coming up with a new model that might, that has listened to the community and might be an alternative option. Those revised options, depending on where that all lands, will be considered by council laws at a meeting in June. So the June deadline is based on the fact that we need to have all our planning documents completed by then. So as a council, and this is the tricky balance that we have to sort of weigh up is that we are legally required to address our long-term financial position. So really doing nothing is not really an option. You'll hear some stats later on, but one that I want to point out is that 40% of councils across New South Wales are in the same boat, and many have actually applied for special rate variations. I think it was even announced today, Uralla are going, Tamworth did, we all know Armidale did a couple of years back, Tenterfield was over 100%. So this isn't something that's unique to Glen Innes Council. It's something that's being it's something that is sorry, I've lost my train of thought. It's something that is affecting all New South Wales councils. So really, we've been not just focused inward in the cost saving and all our planning and the modelling and all of the work that we've been done, but we've also been, and it's part of my job to advocate to represent our needs to state and federal leaders, which I've been doing quite a lot since my mayoralship started. So that's writing to all New South Wales senators, working really closely with our Northern Tableland state representative, and before the election, certainly writing to all the New England federal candidates about what we need. And we're working on a really robust advocacy plan at the moment that we can use to do that, more of that work. But so far, we've really been calling for a restoration of the financial assistance grants to 1% of federal tax revenue by 2025. Unlikely, unfortunately, to happen by 2025. In fact, it's been indicated to us through the country mayors meetings that we go to regularly, that Bernard, the general manager, and I go to regularly, that it's looking more like 5 to 10 years out, but we have to keep trying. The other thing is this competitive grants programs that disadvantage small communities like ours. They're very top down and they're not place-based. And the fact that they're competitive means we can't rely on them to fill the gaps like we used to be able to, because there was a lot more in market a couple of years ago. So the other thing is aligning with the Australian Local Government Authority, so ALGA. They've got a Put Our Communities First campaign and calling for funding priorities and more regular commitments to funding around housing, roads, emergency preparedness, climate action and community infrastructure. So we're aligning to that, and we've got motions that we've put forward for that conference coming up in June. So this is a topic that everyone's trying to address across New South Wales. The other final one is really fairer access to digital infrastructure funding, because regional towns like ours are getting left behind because it doesn't make commercial sense for the telcos to actually put a tower somewhere in our LGA that's quite remote. But we need to keep pushing for that funding model to change so that everyone feels safe and connected within our LGA, no matter where you are in the LGA, like Washpool, for instance. So really the key message to government from me is to give us the tools and resources we need. We'll get the job done because we all know what's best for our community. And that comes from what you guys have told us as well that you want. So really, what we've really aimed to do here in this presentation is just let you understand what's under the hood. So we're being really upfront and transparent. We do want your feedback. We will listen to it. We are making progress and we generally want to do better, but we won't fix everything overnight. I'm committed as your mayor to do everything I can in my toolbox to lead council into a stronger, more sustainable future. And we'll keep pushing hard for resources and recognition of Glen Innes 7. So thank you for showing up today. I also just want to extend my thanks to the council staff. As I said, this work's been going on for quite some time, and their dedication and commitment and professionalism is something that I want to thank them for and recognise, because they're also members of our community. You know, they're in the soccer club, you know, the kids play together. They work hard, they do the best they can, and we're all in it together. This is a tough conversation, as I said, especially in the environment we are in today around cost of living. We get that. We're hearing the concern, especially for pensioners and the elderly. And we do have a hardship policy, and we are actually looking at other mechanisms that we might be able to pull forward or adapt or change or improve to address some of that concern around the affordability of any rate rise, no matter what the number is, for our elderly people. So we've heard that, we get it. We're doing work behind that. So I do look forward to your thoughts and feedback and answering your questions later in the session. I'll hand back over.
Thanks very much, Madam Mayor. I'll now hand over to the General Manager, Bernard Smith, who'll talk about Council's role in the community and then take us through the strategic planning documents that are up on public exhibition.
Okay, thank you, Fiona. Yeah, I think it's important to just set a bit of context, paint a bit of a picture of our role as local government and the important role we play in terms of delivering for the community, making it a livable community and a community we can be proud of. And I suppose I've got a couple of themes here. Firstly, it's around, as the Mayor was referring to it, our role in advocacy, our role in lobbying, our role in facilitation. It's a really important function of any regional council to advocate to particularly other levels of government for our needs, whether that is, as the Mayor mentioned, roads, whether it's health. We need to keep going out there and banging the drum, knocking on doors, seizing opportunities to ensure that our voice is heard, that we are the squeaky wheel, and that we work with other councils as well to deliver for our residents. And I suppose a few simple examples in terms of either cooperation or advocacy. You know, at officer level, we met with Tenterfield Council today around a couple of issues. We met yesterday with Crown Lands. The Mayor last week met with the Minister for Local Government and other politicians. And at all of those, we were talking about issues important to us, matters which we believe the state government needs to address. Yes, sometimes you do feel like you're banging your head against the wall, but nothing will happen unless we talk about it. Nothing will happen unless we advocate. So that is such a critically important role for the council. Thanks, Fiona. But on a more immediate level, you know, the old saying, we are the level of government closest to the people. And, you know, tomorrow morning, our staff will be out, whether it's cleaning the streets, maintaining the roads, opening the library. We will be out there facilitating the local economy. We want people to feel good about where they live, and all the services we provide, you know, facilitate our residents or enable our residents to go about their day-to-day business. As I mentioned, it might be roads, it might be after-school care, managing the cemetery, home care. That really important service of enabling our residents to stay in their homes as long as possible. Our youth facilities, our library, our waste management, we touch every one of our residents every day. And it's a responsibility. It's something we enjoy doing because we know we're assisting the community. I like to say that every single person in the organisation is about making the region a better place and helping our residents. So our long-term plans are about not only doing what we're going to go out and do tomorrow, but ensuring we're thinking about what we need to do next year and the year after. So we are at the start of a council term. In New South Wales, we have what's called the Integrated Planning and Reporting Framework. And apart from the fact that we need to do it, it is good practice to take a step back and think, you know, what does this community need? In the middle of last year, we went to the community and said, what's important to you over the next 10 years? What is going to make Glen Innes and the rest of the region a better place? And whilst the answers weren't unexpected, the fact we went and rechecked in with the community on these things is really important. And yes, healthcare, infrastructure, employment and economic growth was very strong. Of course, we want more and better community facilities, medical facilities. We want the place to look good in terms of our roads and streets and town centres. As I said, we want to feel good about where we live. We want to be proud of where we live. And all of these things go to the council creating what I call that operating environment. Just to touch on the process, this has been a long process to date, and it's still got some way to go. In fact, back in February of last year, Council received a report around the need for a sustainability review. That was February last year. In June, the councillors received had a workshop report around the outcome of that review, which indicated we weren't financially sustainable into the long term. And then further to that, we undertook work around business improvement, around our current pricing mechanisms, around our asset depreciation, developed up a long-term financial model. In fact, the very first workshop the new councillors undertook was quite a comprehensive briefing on our financial sustainability and the options for going forward. Officers did put to council a proposal in late October last year, and at that point in time, acknowledging it was only a matter of weeks since I'd been elected, there was a decision by the council to defer it. So now we are back here again in terms of not only developing up the community strategic plan and the other documents, which I'll talk about in a moment, but also an updated long-term financial model. So in terms of that, just very quickly, that strategic planning framework, we have at the top of the tree, so to speak, the community strategic plan that takes a 10-year view. It's about what are the things which are important to us as a community, and noting these may be things which are not the responsibility of council. This is holistic. These may be issues which are within the remit of state or federal government, but they are the issues which are important to the community, and they are the matters which, if council is responsible, we will still work very hard to achieve. Then from that, we have our delivery program, and that does reflect what the council wishes to undertake over the next 4 years. These are the things which are within our sphere of influence, and these, in some respects, it's the work plan for the next 4 years for this council. And on a more immediate level, we have our operational plan, which in effect that it includes our budget. What is our budget for the next 12 months? What are the things we will undertake in the next 12 months? It's more granular. It will identify specific sites, specific projects, specific actions. So we have the long-term vision at the top of the tree. We have the 4-year horizon for council, and then every year we have an operational plan and that has the goal of putting into action, working towards those strategic objectives. So as I said, the community strategic plan has 5 strategic objectives. It's around the economy, the importance of the economy, what we need to do around our infrastructure, of course, protecting the environment. Open and collaborative leadership is about our government institutions, the council, how it operates, how it engages with the community, how well it goes about its business, and a thriving and connected community, that social interaction, that how do we function as a community, how do we have a cohesive society. There's far too much detail here, of course, but it's just giving a little bit of a hint of the structure of it. For example, under prosperous and diverse economy, we may talk about in broadening the economic base, economic development strategy, destination management plan, fit for the future infrastructure, the importance of roads, bridges, etc. So it just starts to drill down into more specific areas. And then far too many words in this one, but it's just an indication of we have our 5 strategic objectives and then all the information which falls under that, which ultimately translates into what the council will do on a year-by-year basis. Some of these actions in the current document are, of course, dependent on the SRV additional funding. So just to try and make it a bit real, we'll quickly go through some examples. Thriving and connected community. In terms of the delivery plan, we want to work to strengthen access to healthcare. And that really is very much about advocacy and lobbying. Council, in fact, has been closely involved in the establishment of the Health Hub, which you may have heard about, which will be opening soon. We're not operating it, we're not funding it, but we did work closely with them to identify sites. I know for a fact they really appreciated the council support. And that's an example of, we could either stand back and be a bit difficult to get on with, or we could roll our sleeves up and give them all the support they need. And that's a good example of that. And the other one, the events, support, organise, facilitate events. We've just had the very successful Australian Celtic Festival, but we'd like to have another event over the course of the year, or attract smaller events, which is so important. The visitor economy is so important to us. Prosperous and diverse economy. The Mayor and myself met with, referring to the quality tertiary education, the Mayor and myself met with the Chancellor of Armidale University some time ago, and we emphasised the importance of the facility we have in Glen Innes, essentially sending the message, make sure you continue to do that. So it's sort of maintaining that pressure, maintaining our presence, making them recognise that it's really important to us. Encourage housing diversity. That may occur through changing our planning scheme, and council is moving towards becoming more closely involved in delivering housing, given it is such an important issue for us. Fit for the future infrastructure. We have identified the need to look at our open space management and the strategy, and that is a task we wish to undertake. We recognise, and the Mayor referred to future funding, what we need to have a plan. If there is a funding program emerge which is appropriate, we need to make sure we have the plans in place, the concepts in place. We've got a project ready to go, and that is so important when it comes to attracting grants. And our environment, a key one in the delivery plan, something council needs to do a lot of work on, is around waste management. It's very complex, it's highly regulated, it involves the environment. We have curbside collection, recycling collection, landfills, waste transfer stations, and it's highly regulated. But we need to understand, and it's a changing field as well, and we need to do some very serious work which will lead to operational outcomes. And open and collaborative leadership, that is about how well we go about managing ourselves, managing the community's funds, how well we go about planning for the future. And obviously that has led to the process we're going through at the moment in terms of a special rate variation. And it's about, in terms of managing public resources, the service we provide, whether it's when someone walks in the door or logs onto the website, we get compared to the best service people get elsewhere from all the other agencies they deal with. So we have a responsibility, not only because it's efficient and effective, but because of community expectation to be as professional as possible in terms of the organisation. And then going to the operational plan, as I said, that's what are we going to do over the next 12 months. There's a whole range of actions within the document. I think there's something like 114. A very important one is cost saving, looking at cost savings, efficiencies, service reviews. It is simply good practice to continually review our services, and we do. but we certainly need to be more thorough and more methodical. Office relocation is a significant project for us. It has generated some discussion, understandably, but we're in a situation where nothing's been done for 40 or 50 years of any significance. We are a situation now where the premises are non-compliant, not particularly safe, totally unfunctional, and it's a cost of doing business. It's like paying staff, having vehicles, paying the power bill. It's the cost of doing business. Council has been considering it for 10 to 15 years, and I think we've identified the most cost-effective solution. Our budget has revenue of just over $37 million and expenditure, including depreciation, of $41 or almost $42 million, which leads to the operating deficit of just over $4 million. So that's the reality we have ongoing, and that's what we'll discuss a bit further.
Thank you, Bernard. I'll ask our Director of Place and Growth to address the new waste pricing strategy. We have 2 slides on this. Rihanna?
Thanks, Fiona, and thanks again, everyone, for taking time out of your evening to attend tonight. So why are we proposing to raise the waste fees? Council is legally required to charge for domestic waste services in a way that covers the reasonable cost of providing them. Right now, our current fee model doesn't do that. It mostly just covers running our waste facilities at the bare minimum and our staff costs. I'd like to also emphasise at this point that all revenue from our waste charges in the rates goes directly into a dedicated waste reserve to fund operations, maintenance, compliance and future capital projects. The waste fund sits separately to the general fund reserves, which the standard rates go into. So after a review of our waste fees and charges as part of the long-term financial plan, we are proposing a 100% increase to the waste management facility charge on the rates. So that's proposed to go from $84 a year to $168 next financial year. Then that fee will continue to rise in line with CPI the following years. We are also proposing our bin collection charges to increase by 100% over the 3 years, which you can see on the slide before you, which is a summary. So as you can see, we are proposing 35% next year and then 32.5% the years thereafter. You will note that we've got the waste management facility charge at the $168 for next year, and then you'll see it rise in line with just the CPI the years after that. We've also shown Tenterfield and Uralla Shire Council. So Tenterfield is, that's what they're proposing for next financial year. Uralla's just for this financial year. So compared to those councils, Glen Innes 7 fees, particularly the waste management facility charge, is lower. And look, I've included this comparison to provide context and show that even with the proposed increases, our fees will remain largely in line with or below what others in the region are already charging. And the additional fees are proposed to go towards maintaining and operating our landfills, which include our Glen Innes facility, our 3 rural landfills at Red Range, Deepwater and Emmaville, which I do note Glen Innes residents are able to utilise, as well as our regular bin collections across several towns. In addition, the fees are also proposed to go to over $5 million in capital projects over the next 10 years. That includes the construction of waste transfer stations at Glen Innes and our rural landfills, proposal to increase our waste pickup services to other parts of the LGA in coming years, getting organised for planning and implementation for our FOGO or Food Organics, Green Waste Organics process, which is required to happen before 2030. Allocation for remediation of portions of our landfills, which will occur over a 10-year period, and explore new technologies to assist with keeping the waste charges as low as possible in years to come. I'd like to emphasise finally that these fees and charges are currently on exhibition. They're contained in our operational plan, so community members are welcome to complete submissions in response to the proposed fee changes. Thanks
very much, Rihanna. I'd now like to invite Lindsay Woodland, the Director of Corporate and Community Services, to speak to creating and maintaining our financial sustainability.
Thanks, Fiona, and good evening, everyone. In this part of the presentation, I'll be covering the importance of financial sustainability for councils, the financial challenges facing this council and why we're currently not financially sustainable, and what we've done and what we plan to do to improve our financial position and sustainability. I'll also cover in quite some detail the proposed special rate variation and the options being considered, and I hope to provide clarification for everyone around the SRV and why it's needed. In terms of the long-term financial plan, it's a critical document for council, and it's linked closely to the Community Strategic Plan Delivery Program and the operating plan that Bernard has just gone through. Fundamentally, it ensures that council remains financially sustainable. It helps to answer the question on how financially resilient we are. It asks the question of, are our community assets fit for purpose, which is very important. Can we afford what the community is asking for? And what are the opportunities to generate new revenue and economic growth, which again is extremely important for this council moving forward. What funding is required to implement the community's priorities and council's delivery program. So all of those things are addressed in the long-term financial plan. A financially sustainable council is one that has the ability to fund ongoing service delivery and renew and replace its assets as required. There are 4 key principles for financial sustainability. The first is that council must achieve a fully funded operating position. We must also maintain sufficient cash reserves. The third one is council must have a fully funded capital program. And the final one is council must maintain its asset base by renewing identified ageing infrastructure and ensuring that cash reserves are set aside for those works yet to be identified. In fact, the Local Government Act requires all New South Wales councils to ensure sound financial management and to be financially sustainable. Councils really don't have a choice in this matter. And if they're not seen to be financially sustainable, then OLG are not, of course, not happy with this position and will certainly intervene to ensure that councils are financially sustainable moving forward. Councils must also consider the financial effects on future generations when funding the cost of services and infrastructure. So it's not just about this generation, it's about our children and their children and future generations to come, and the legacy that the council and community leave for future generations. And councils operate, as mentioned previously by our mayor, in a highly regulated environment. So we're bound by certain rules, regulations and procedures to ensure that we maintain financial sustainability. These factors all combine to ensure that we're financially sustainable for future generations. Through a recent review of council's finances back last year, it became clear that this council is not financially sustainable. At that time, we had general fund deficits moving forward of around 6.1 million per annum, which after action taken by council at that time, we're now forecasting an average of 4.7 million over the next 10 years. And that's outlined, that was outlined in the long-term financial plan. Glen Innes Council is not alone, though, in this regard. A recent review of the financial state of New South Wales councils identified that 47 councils, in fact, are reporting operating deficits. That's 40% of New South Wales councils experiencing financial stress. Many of these are actually regional and rural councils, just like us, and include councils like Tamworth, for example. 16 New South Wales councils are reported to have severe cash problems, including Glen Innes 7 Council. Some 32 councils over the past 3 years have applied for special rate variations, and many of those are regional councils, again, just like us, and quite a few of those are our neighbouring councils. Madam Mayor reflected on Armidale, which was approved for a 58.8% special rate variation, Tenterfield at 104% price increase, rate increase through their special rate variation, but also include Kyogle, Tamworth, Gunnedah and more. IPART approved 9 special rate variations last year alone, including Tamworth, and 17 councils were approved the year before, including Armidale and Tenterfield, with another 6 SRV applications currently being considered by IPART. Next slide, please, Fiona. So why is Glen Innes 7 Council not financially sustainable? Well, it's not a single factor. It's actually a combination of factors that we can point to. Firstly, we've seen some significant increases in the cost of materials and services over the past few years, including our insurance costs, which this year alone has gone up 15%. That's 150,000 in 1 year. Technology costs have gone up, cyber security costs, they're now requiring us something like 250,000 a year to meet the cyber security expectations. General materials and contractor costs have increased. Our auditor costs have gone up by more than double in the last couple of years. Depreciation has also increased in the last year after a revaluation of our assets. Our depreciation costs went up 1.5 million. All of these costs generally outstrip the modest rate pegs that council has received over the past 5 years. They're typically around 2%, sometimes they go down to 0.7%, as happened a couple of years ago. The most recent year they went up to 4.4%, but generally they're well under what our costs go up each year. In Glen Innes, we have very limited growth in population, and of course, there's a limited number of ratepayers that actually can cover these cost increases. And as I'll show you shortly, the level of grant funding is now reducing, and we've been relying a lot on grant funding over the last few years, as I'll show you shortly. And so we need to reduce our reliance on these funds moving forward and rely more on our own sources of revenue. I think Madam Mayor reflected on the federal assistance grants. They've reduced significantly over the years, and in last year alone dropped by 1.5 million on the previous year. So again, these grants that we rely on are reducing. Also, the cost shifting of federal and state governments, and one example is the Department of Communities and Justice recently pulled the legal services in regional and rural communities, and we relied on those services, and the community relied on those services for things like dispute management, for example. Now, who has to pick up those sort of services? Well, it's up to council, of course, and that comes at a cost, and all we get is an email saying, sorry, we're pulling the service. Next slide, please, Fiona. This slide has got a couple of interesting factors in it. One is the operating performance over the 5 years. You can see there the expenses line has remained, even in the face of these cost increases, we've managed to maintain our expenses relatively well over the last 5 years. And our revenue, you can see, has gone up and then come back down again. And that's largely as a result of grants, operating grants. And you can see at the bottom of the chart, two periods of deficits. In 2020-21, we were posting deficits. Then we got this surge of grants, operating grants particularly, which increased by 3 million in 22 and 5 million in 23. And all of a sudden they've dropped off in 24 and 25. So it's a bit like a sugar hit. We've relied on those grants. They almost mask the underlying financial performance. Without them, we would have run deficits in those years. And of course, as they come off, we do run deficits. And moving forward, the 10-year forecast is for deficits for the next 10 years, unless we do something about that. I just move to the next slide. This shows our dependence on grants, and the capital grants are in the green and the operating grants in the blue. The capital grants, we typically had capital grants of around $2 to $3 million a year prior to 2020, and you can see the increase in capital grants in 21-22, peaking in last year at almost 20 million, which creates for us, well, you know, grants are wonderful, they're terrific. It does create some problems in financial management. So grants, as I said, are terrific. They fund new assets, and they would not ordinarily be, our community would not ordinarily be able to afford, such as the fabulous indoor sports centre. And it's a great example because it was a $7 million grant. It was something that we wouldn't have been able to afford without that grant. Also the airport runway upgrade, $3 million, fully grant funded. However, they do come with a bit of a warning sticker. And when assets are created or renewed, your depreciation increases. So the assets need to be maintained moving forward. And of course, that creates your increased cost as we move forward. They also cost more to operate. An example is that indoor sports centre. And the indoor sports centre now costs us something like $215,000 a year to operate and to pay insurance on it. And the depreciation costs are included. So that $215,000 comes with this beautiful new asset that is grant funded by government. Thank you very much, government, but it costs ongoing every year to maintain that asset and to operate it. When an asset is renewed, the accounting standards prescribe that we must dispose of the original asset at a loss, which is also a hit to our bottom line. And so, for instance, the airport runway, we have to dispose of the old airport runway, believe it or not, and that comes at a cost. Many grants we secure require us to perform and complete the work before we receive the funds, and Madam Mayor alluded to this. We have to pay for the work before we get the funding, and sometimes it can take a year or two before we get that funding returned to us. And so that's the issue around the cash flow management around these capital grants. And we're doing our best to manage that, but quite often that really does impact our cash position. Next slide, thank you. Yeah. We're certainly not sitting on our hands. We're addressing all of these challenges to the best extent we can. In the QBR2, that was quarterly business review earlier this year, we managed to identify savings of some $600,000, and that included things like deferring several of our IT projects, which weren't so urgent that we needed to do them this year. We deferred a major sewer network SCADA project until next year. We deferred an employee engagement survey, and we also have much more prudent management of vacancies. When they become available, we don't fill them straight away. We let them lag before we fill them. So that created $600,000 of savings, and we're continuing to look for savings, and we're going through the quarterly business review again for this last quarter, and again we're looking to find savings, and that will be a continual journey for us moving forward. However, also moving forward, we've identified a further $100,000 per annum for the next 5 financial years in efficiency gains and implementing things like new technology, reducing discretionary spend, upskilling existing staff to avoid more expensive contractors, reducing our procurement costs by implementing new analytical technology to really focus on and illuminate where the procurement costs are going, and so to make better decisions around procurement, reviewing our underutilised property and land to minimise maintenance costs, and looking for ways to reduce our depreciation further. And we hope to bring more good news for the community as we move forward. However, I just want to mention before we move on to this slide, Fiona, that that's still not enough to achieve long-term sustainability, and therefore, very regrettably, we have to come to the community and discuss a special rate variation to help us achieve financial sustainability moving forward, and to help us to continue to deliver the services at a level you expect and maintain and renew our assets. Next slide, thanks, Fiona. There are 3 videos that we have online in the Have Your Say portal, which I really do encourage you to look at. They're from our expert Morrison Lowe, and they explain how rates work. They explain our current financial position in some detail, and they also explain the special rate variation scenarios with more information. So now to provide some detail on the options for the special rate variations, and as Madam Mayor mentioned, no one wants a rate increase, and Council certainly would like to avoid this if we possibly could. However, as I've explained, it's really come to a stage where it's unavoidable. We have 4 financial scenarios. 3 of these achieve financial sustainability. The first scenario basically is a do-nothing scenario, does not achieve our financial sustainability, and I want to make that clear. And as I mentioned previously, Council has no option but to be financially sustainable. The 3 other options do achieve our objective. Our objective is to be financially sustainable in the 28-29 financial year, 2 or 3 years away. And we're planning to, all of the scenarios we've developed have achieved that. We'll just go to the next slide. The first scenario, as I mentioned, is really a do-nothing scenario, and we call it managed decline because over time, as we build these deficits every year, we're basically not maintaining our assets or renewing our assets to the level that we are required. And you'll see that deterioration over time, and eventually it'll impact the level of service that we can provide moving forward. This scenario, I want to make clear again, it's not financially sustainable. The scenario 2 is the first of the special rate variation scenarios. It's a 2-year scenario, and we call it sustainability because it's the minimum requirement if we're to achieve financial sustainability by 28-29. It is the minimal requirement to achieve financial sustainability in that time frame. It allows us to continue to deliver the services at a level that our community would expect, and that we're and to renew and maintain our assets to a level that would be expected not just by the community but by the Office of Local Government. Just to finish that off, the general fund would achieve a modest surplus, again, to allow us to achieve our objective. Scenario 3 is there's 2 growth and prosperity scenarios. One is a 2-year scenario and the other is a 3-year. The 2-year scenario costs a cumulative effect over the 2 years of 61.75% when it's implemented. That's an increase of 31.5% in 26-27 and 23% in 27-28. All of these SRV scenarios include the rate peg, so they're inclusive of the rate peg mentioned earlier. That means that residential rates would increase by 320 on average, that is, it's for the average ratepayer, residential ratepayer, on average 322.93 in 26-27 and $310.07 in 27-28. The average farmland rates would increase by 1155.62 in 26-27 and 1109.57 in 27-28. And the business rates are generally a little bit more than double the residential rates on an average basis. So that gives you an indication of business rates. We just don't have it here because of the detail on the slide, but it's in the information pack in more detail. There's limited opportunity to deliver some of the growth and prosperity program, which I'll go through shortly, but it gives you an indication again of what that scenario is. Scenario 4, again a growth and prosperity scenario, It delivers the special rate variation over 3 years, and the cumulative effect of that is a little bit higher than the 2-year scenario. So it comes out at 68.5%. Of course, some of that is because the rate peg is built in there as well in the 3-year option. And so that eases the pressure on a year-by-year increase for ratepayers. It's 271.67 in the first year, 259.37 in the second year, and 171.18 in the third year. And again, average farmland rates, it's 972.18 in the first year, 928.16 in the second year, and 612.59 cents in the third year. This scenario does deliver the Growth and Prosperity Program, which I'll talk about now. Just move to the next slide, thanks. So the growth and prosperity scenarios ensure that we can deliver a surplus required that will deliver things like the health services strategy. We want to attract more health professionals and medical facilities to our LGA. Council needs to facilitate this to happen because it's not happening fast enough without our intervention. And this provides the funding to be able to advocate strongly and to develop programs that will attract doctors and medical professionals to our LGA over the period. Economic development strategy is critical for identifying and securing industry and business opportunities and growing the all-important visitor economy. And Bernard mentioned the Celtic Festival, which is a fantastic event. We do want more events and more initiatives that will attract visitors to this community. The Our Towns Improvement Program is really all about improving the livability for our local villages and towns that are so important and so vibrant in across our LGA. And the Housing Facilitation Program, again, without Council's involvement and the planning initiatives to create more housing stock, this would not happen fast enough. So we do need to invest more in this critical area. And of course, the final one that we're looking at is our town hall, which I think everyone knows requires a major renovation, and the planning for that needs to happen shortly. Next slide, please, Fiona. As can be seen here, the three options, SRV options, all achieve the financial sustainability objective by 28-29 financial year and moving forward from there. Some people have asked why we haven't modelled other scenarios such as 30%. Well, the answer is that, you know, the sustainability scenario option 2, which I mentioned before, is the minimum required to achieve that objective by 28-29. Once we hear and listen to and go through all the community feedback at the end of this process, we will certainly consider other options, and one of those is pushing out that objective by a year, which may make all the difference. It's also about looking at further savings that we're looking to make in the future, and also looking at depreciation review and making savings from reducing our depreciation costs in a legitimate way. So when we pull all of that information together, all the feedback together, we'll certainly review all of these scenarios, and we may look at other options as well at that time. But we need to do that once we get all the information. And this slide provides a little bit more clarity on the way the SRV will play out for our residents. And it focuses just on the 3-year option, the Growth and Prosperity 3-year options as an example, but it's similar for the other options. So as a baseline in 25-26, which is outlined in the budget, excuse me, the baseline is for the average residential rates of $1,025. That moves up by $271.67 in 26-7. Then it moves up again in 27-28 by $259.37, and the final year it moves up by 171.18. And then that new figure of what we call the baseline at that point, after the full implementation of the SRV, becomes the new baseline, and that's set at $1,727.40. From there on, it's just the rate peg applies forevermore on that new baseline figure. So each year after that, for the first year, we're assuming a 3% increase. It's $51.82 increase, then $53.38, then $54.98 as we move forward. And beyond that, depending on what the rate peg is, that will be the increase moving forward. We've also had questions around, does it apply to my entire rates bill? No, it's just the residential part of the rates bill as identified there. That's the area that will increase. It's not about the sewerage or the water charges. It's simply about the rate, the general rates. Thank you for that, and I'm happy to take your questions after the presentation.
Thanks, Lindsay. So we're in the midst of a very comprehensive process at the moment. This is our second virtual meeting. We've had a meeting in Emmaville last week, the town hall meeting last night. We're in Deepwater in a couple of weeks' time, and we have another virtual meeting as well. There is an enormous amount of information provided online. And we will be undertaking a phone survey. You can go to the Have Your Say site. So I suppose the moral of the story is there's an enormous amount of information out there, and it's a very comprehensive process. Thanks, Fiona. I think where to from here, or what happens going forward. Following this process, Council will be considering all the feedback at its June meeting. It will be considering whether there are other options, and it may make a decision to proceed. What happens then, we need to notify IPART by November 2025 as to whether we wish to apply, and then the application is made by February 2026, and we would expect a decision around this time next year. So if you go back and consider that the ball was started rolling on this process in the first half of last year, it will be almost, or probably 2 years from go to woe in terms of an outcome. Noting also too that there was a report put to Council in last October to initiate a consultation process, and that was deferred. So it's been a very exhaustive, lengthy process, and that is particularly important to IPART. They very specifically state that we must undertake a very comprehensive awareness program to ensure the community understands what is being proposed. Thanks,
Thank you. Thank you to the panel, and we've only got one question typed in, and I note that someone, Kim, I believe it is, has got her hand up. So if you could type your question into the chat or Q&A, I'll read out the question that we have so far. These slides show a base rate increase, not the total rates payable, including ad valorem component, ? So I'll just put that question to our Chief Financial Officer. Shagir, are you able to provide some commentary on this?
Yep. Fiona, would you mind just reading out the question again? Because I just can't see it here on the chat.
It says, these slides show base rate increases, not total rates payable, including ad valorem, ?
Yep. So the ad valorem, or we refer to the cents in the dollar, the rate, is based on the land valuation. So the land valuation will not affect how the rates are calculated. So every time the rate peg is applied, or if an SRV is applied to your land valuation, the ad valorem amount or the cents in the dollar will be adjusted accordingly. So, for example, a lot of residents noticed and were concerned that after COVID, when they got their new land valuations, they had nearly doubled, and they were concerned that their rates were going to double. But the rates are hinged on the rate peg. So they're controlled by the rate peg. So we only put up the rates by the rate peg or any approved SRV percentages. So I hope that answers the question.
Thanks very much, Shagir. We have another question from John. Some years back, we had 2 buses that went to Brisbane from Glen. We now have none. How about a small bus from Glen to Stanthorpe that can connect with the, connect with the bus to Brisbane? With the empty shops, bad roads and lack of transport options and new businesses, I feel the town is very slowly declining. Please listen to the citizens. You're only elected to represent the people. Many would like to hear other proposals as well.
I suppose maybe I'll take that one. In fact, Transport for New South Wales is doing work at the moment about bus connectivity within the region, and I can't quote the name exactly, but that is certainly, as far as bus services, that's within the domain of the state government. We have advocated to them for that to happen, and I suppose it is a good case of advocacy.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that I will take that on board and put it on my list to speak to the minister about how that consultation's gone, what the outcomes are looking like. So I can certainly meet with the minister on that as well.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'm assuming this is Kim that had her hand up, but it's a comment or a statement. So thank you, Kim. With all due respect, using Tamworth as some sort of rationale for small councils running at a deficit is insulting to our community. Tamworth has a state-of-art hospital and an operating airport, a thriving town centre. So residents would be likely to be more open to an SRV, since these services more than likely created the reason for Tamworth's deficit, and it's understandable and acceptable to them. This is not the case here in Glen Innes 7.
A comment there. Firstly, obviously, the Tamworth Hospital, that's the responsibility of the state government. So council did not provide the hospital. The airport, yes, that is the council's. But I think Tamworth is a good example in some ways of the systemic nature of the financial challenges New South Wales Council face. Tamworth Regional Council, 8 or 10 times bigger than us, significant economies of scale compared to us. They have a growing population, I suspect 1.5%, so their rate base is increasing. So they have all those advantages over us financially, and yet they still have the need to implement a special rate variation. So if Tamworth needs it, that's certainly we're far more disadvantaged financially than Tamworth is.
Thank you, Bernard. I have a comment or suggestion here from a previous councillor and mayor, Rob Banham. Can you split the CSP and SRV so that more time consideration can be given to the SRV by the community?
Mm. Look, I think the answer is probably yes. However, I suppose how much time is appropriate. I think you may correct me, Fiona, but we're doing above and beyond in terms of exhibition. We mentioned before about a very thorough and comprehensive process. We certainly talked to IPART about what they believe is appropriate as well. So, we're of the belief that we're implementing a very comprehensive campaign to ensure the community is aware, and that is the requirement of IPART around community awareness. And we will need to demonstrate to them that we've done what is necessary to make the community awareness if an application is to be successful.
Thank you very much. I'm just trying to find a next.
Sorry, can I just add another point to that? Actually, the two are conduits of each other. In the plans, you might see in the detail, for example, in the delivery program, that some of the strategic actions in there actually have SRV in brackets. So that means that we can look at the plans and say, well, these are what we can do without an SRV, and this is what we can do with an SRV. And otherwise, it would be a very duplicative process to undertake and separate them, in my view.
Thanks very much, Madam Mayor. We have a comment here from Tracy. First of all, thank you for all your information and time. What's the point of having a great looking town when the ratepayers aren't going to have any money left to maintain the upkeep of their own homes, which is going to make the homes and towns not very appealing to the visitor's eye? I can't see how this is going to work. Maybe think of a small increase, 30%, not to sink the town's ratepayers. Who would like to comment on that?
Oh, look, I'll have a go at that. Look, and that is one of the challenges. The feedback from the community is they want a great looking town. So, you know, that is what we would love to deliver, but there comes a cost with it. We want good infrastructure. It comes at a cost. We want good sporting facilities. So the decision for council is what is the appropriate level of services, what is the appropriate level of maintenance or the necessary level of maintenance, you know, to what extent, at what level should we make the town look good? So it's government is about priorities and about balance, and that is the challenge. We want to respond to what the community wants, but it also needs to be paid for.
Yeah, and I'd just add to that, because there was also comment around the small increase of 30%, which I think we've covered off, but just as a reminder to what Lindsay presented earlier, that 30% doesn't get us to sustainability. The other thing is that we really need to increase our population. We have a projected population increase of 0.1% year on year. In fact, a few years ago, we were projected by the department to reduce our population would reduce by nearly 40%. Now, when we're thinking about rates, then it's directly linked also to the population size. You know, we've said we deliver similar or very similar services to city or metros that have much larger a rate base. So part of managing the rate cost is also to try and put initiatives forward around economic development or beautification or improved housing and all of these things to actually try and attract more population to increase the rate base. And so the burden of funding is spread, you know, wider. So that would be the other point I would make there. And we certainly want to keep looking, and we will over the next term, to look at what we need to do to increase population so we've got a greater rate base to pull funding from, so that lowers the impact or any potential increase impact into the future.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I now have 3 questions, which I'm going to go through. So I'll try to do them as briskly as first. Another one from Rob. You mentioned last night that you have a capacity to pay report for the SRV and also the increased waste fees. I actually don't know whether we have one for the waste fees, but why does that have to go to council before it's made public? Bernard or Lindsay, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, look, it's simply appropriate practice for a document such as that. And no, I don't think it relates to the waste fees. I think it's just the SRV. Yeah.
Thanks very much. And this is from Kylie. Are more subdivisions being approved to enable additional rate income? Are any other rate categories being increased? So there's two questions there. The first one in relation to subdivisions can go to the Director of Place and Growth. Rihanna?
Thanks, Fiona, and thanks for your question, Kylie. In response, yes, there are a number of subdivisions that are approved. Most are small, two lot subdivisions. We do have a large one online that we are working with the developer. So yeah, there's definitely a lot happening in that space. But yeah, our land is still relatively cheap, and that sometimes poses a barrier for developers in terms of having to extend the infrastructure. Again, we're really working hard to deliver some more subdivisions as best we can.
Thanks very much, Rihanna. Shagir, can you answer the question, are any other rate categories being increased?
Yes, so as part of the SRV proposal, it's residential rates, business rates, farmland and mining rates will go up at the same rate as whichever SRV is approved by our part once it's approved. So it's all those categories in our shire that will be increased as well.
Thank you, Shagir. Another question from Keith. I can appreciate the position council is in, and no one wants a business with a red ledger. I must ask though, what is the current percentage of Glen Innes ratepayers in arrears or default? And is this high already? How will raising rates improve that position? Concerned about the elderly without food and electricity and paying their rates. I'll ask the Chief Financial Officer first to answer the question about the percentage of ratepayers in arrears, and then maybe a comment from the General Manager about how raising rates will improve their concern in relation to the elderly. Shagir?
Thank you, Fiona. Yes, so our overdue percentage is around 13% at the moment, and we are trying to get that down below 10%. And we do work with a lot of the ratepayers, working with our hardship policy, looking at our prepayment plans before we go down any sort of further action. So we always encourage ratepayers to apply for the hardship policy. We review it and we encourage that. So that's the state at the moment.
Yeah, certainly. Oh, sorry. As Shagir mentioned, in terms of rates and arrears, there's a proportion who are genuinely finding it tough and our hardship policy is there to cater for that. Unfortunately, you'll always find there's a percentage who just don't like to pay their bills, and that's where we undertake stronger action, and that is something we need to turn our mind to in terms of those particular instances, but that's the importance of the hardship policy. And going forward, if an SRV is approved, then we're particularly cognizant of the impact and the importance of our hardship policy and what we can do in that regard.
Thank you very much, Bernard. Another question from Kim. Will you publish an annual SRV report card showing money raised and exactly where it is spent? Lindsay?
Yes, I think that will be a requirement of IPART once, if and when they approve the special rate variation. That's usually a requirement, the reporting requirement, which is a transparent process, and that information is provided to council and provided to the community.
Thanks very much. Kylie has a supplementary question.
Sorry, can I just interrupt for a second, Fiona, because we've missed one further up the chat from Cecily.
Oh, Cecily.
To bring that to your attention.
Yeah, thank you. My concerns are a lack of support for small business and people willing to invest in the town, the near constant change over of staff. Is there any reason for this? And what are exit interviews concurring from this? Bernard?
Yeah, look, over the last I think probably 2 to 4 years, our turnover has varied between 10 and 20%. Go back 3 or 4 years, there's a COVID impact there. Look, we find generally that a little bit of turnover is good, but that people are leaving for the right reasons, whether it's family reasons, whether it's career progression. So we haven't found any sort of emerging themes. In a small organisation, it does have an impact. You'll have a particular role, there's only one person dealing in that area. And when they go, we do suffer from a loss of knowledge, and that's just the reality of being a relatively small organisation.
Thanks very much, Bernard. And the supplementary questions was from Kylie, who says, with regard to the rate categories, I was referring to water availability, sewerage and drainage charges.
I can answer that one, Fiona, if you like.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't answer your question or address your question. So it is only general rates that are being affected by the SRV application. If you're referring to your water availability, your sewer and drainage charges, they are in your fees and charges report, and they are only going up by the CPI that we've proposed in the fees and charges document. And as mentioned previously, your waste charges for domestic curbside pickup for your 140 litre bin, 240 litre bin and 360 litre bins, and your waste management facility fee, that is going up. For the waste management facility fee, that's going up 100% from $84 to $168. And then for your curbside pickup service, that is going up 100% over the next 3 years. So the first year is 35%, and then the subsequent 2 years is at 32.5%.
Thanks very much, Shagir. Now, I noticed that there's a couple of questions that I haven't been able to... Oh, here I see. From Pioneer, his question was there from a few minutes ago now. Why aren't the grants outlined in the business papers anymore? Shagir, are you able to answer that one?
Yes, so we have a monthly capital report, and that capital report does outline the funding source of each capital project. So we have numerous capital projects that are grant funded, and you can refer to that monthly report to see where the source funding is. It could be general funds. We have the water, waste, and sewer and waste reserves that fund some projects as well. And then there's state and federal government grants that are funding a lot of the capital grants as well.
And that's in the investment report. Is that clear?
That is in the capital report, the monthly capital report, yes. And we do publish the income that we realise from those grants in our financial reports at the end of each year. So you can refer to the financial statements as well for each year that report the amount of work that has been carried out for those capital funded grants, or even grants that are non-capital, which are operational grants as well.
Thanks, Shagir. I have a question from John, who has said, I would like to hear Troy's proposal. Would you please state that clearly?
Sorry,
General Manager?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
I would like to hear Troy's proposal. Would you please state that clearly?
Right, I'm not too sure I follow the question, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you very much, General Manager. Regarding the increases to landfill charges, has the potential for unlawful dumping of waste been considered, especially on Crown land and road reserves, as occurred in the past? Rihanna?
Thanks for your question, Selena. Yes, the potential for unlawful dumping, particularly on Crown land and road reserves, has been considered as part of the broader risk assessment when reviewing our landfill charge increases. We acknowledge that illegal dumping has occurred in the past, and it definitely remains a concern. Just as a bit of background, Council is actively working, obviously, to balance the need to recover the true cost of waste management and our landfill operations, while also minimising the risk of unintended consequences such as illegal dumping. So to that end, we've looked to we're looking to increase our education and enforcement efforts, including surveillance at known hotspots. So that's where we're up to there, and we are seeing some positive improvements. But yeah, definitely acknowledge it's a concern, but it has definitely been considered.
Thanks very much. So I've got 2 more questions that I can see, and Sabila, if I've missed any, you might need to jump in because we're getting very close to our last few minutes. I've got
Cecily had a follow-up question in the chat. Fiona.
Oh, okay. I
And
can't
Kim,
see that because I'm
the
moving
chat.
between chat and Q&A.
Appreciate that. Yep.
Would you like to read that question out, Madam Mayor, because I just can't quite see it?
Cecily was just a little surprised
See it now.
about the comments regarding the job lagging and where positions are not immediately filled. Question mark. Yep.
Oh, look, as Lindsay referred to earlier, that simply is a cost management situation. We obviously need to be careful in terms of the nature of the position. It's not uncommon in organisations. You pause recruitment and you achieve savings through the savings in salaries, but you just need to be careful about how you go about that and look at the nature of the role. I might keep rolling if you like, Fiona, because Kim had a question around.
I just think I'll add to that, Bernard. The other thing is, Cecily, the bigger picture around jobs and skills gaps in regional communities, and sometimes the other side of not being able to fill a position as quickly as we might want to, or is around not having enough applicants or enough applicants that are able to fulfill the requirements of the position. And I guess there's a balance there to strike between, do we take what we can get and then upskill and train, or do we go out to market again and see if we can get any further applicants? So it's a broader issue, but there's that side of it as well.
Bernard, you were going to respond to the question about details on the Town Hall master plan and the office relocation and associated costs.
That was Kim's comments around the Town Hall and office relocation, which are obviously closely interlinked. We need to get out of the 2 buildings we are in, being the Town Hall and Church Street, due to safety, due to risk, due to non-functionality. There are cohorts of people we cannot employ because those offices are not accessible, do not have accessible amenities. People can't move between floors. We lack meeting rooms. They have asbestos, lead paint. It is a risk. It is a serious risk, not just a nice to have. In terms of, and I'll come to the new building, in terms of when particularly the Town Hall is vacated, we need to have a close look at what is the best future use for that building, what is the best future community use for that building, and the other part is how to then make it usable. The Town Hall itself has got appalling amenities, no areas for preparing food, etc., etc. And also from a heritage perspective, it needs an enormous amount of work. There's literally, I would expect, millions of dollars to be spent. But the first thing we need to do, and it will not be cheap, is identify the future usage, look at the building structure, look at the building fabric, develop concept plans, develop plans which will enable us to go for a grant. And of course, we're talking about specialist sort of heritage advice as well. So that will not be a cheap exercise. As far as the office relocation, yes, the total cost, council's been considering that for 10 to 15 years. The total cost of that will be $6 million. It's not subject to the SRV because it's something we have to do. We have no choice. But it involves council acquiring a property, obviously fitting it out, and it will have a very good facility for the next 40 or 50 years. As I said, it's a lot of money, but it's something we have to do.
And I just add in terms of the the town hall project, I've already raised with our member for Northern Tablelands, Barnaby Joyce, that we have these big ticket projects that ideally, around the town hall and looking at the utilisation of that and so we were already flagging that there's some big capital infrastructure projects with the member for New England to give him the heads up, to sow the seed, so that when we are actually in a position to say, well, this is what we want to do with it, we can. He's already got the heads up.
Thanks very much. We're at 7 o'clock, which is the time to finish our meeting. We can extend for just a few minutes to take just 2 more questions that are still outstanding. I don't
Fiona,
think
just interrupting there. Sorry,
Yep.
we just have 4 more questions left. Actually,
Yep.
now we have 5 more questions left. So if you
really, please don't
those
post
last
any more
5.
at this point. Are the panel happy to take the 5 outstanding questions?
Yep.
Okay.
So the next one we have is from Rob.
Yep. If council goes with the larger SRV and IPART doesn't agree, what is council's fallback position?
Look, IPART has, I'm not too sure whether it's totally knocked back, but it's certainly amended applications previously. I know last year Goulburn Mulwaree got knocked back. I think that was around the process itself. Look, we then just, there's 3 parts to the need for the SRV in some respect. It's maintaining the infrastructure, maintaining the services and building up the cash. And they're the building up the cash, we don't have any option. So it will then be a matter of looking at, to be blunt, what services to cut back and what maintenance to cut back on. It's as simple as that.
Thanks, Bernard. Another question from Karen. I can't see growth and prosperity coming in those initial 3 years at any rate that will negate the consequences of increased housing costs. Can you please enlighten me as to what are the real practical measures planned to manage this, especially in the economic growth area? Exactly how are we encouraging growth? That's in relation to the Growth and Prosperity Program. Bernard, would you like to start on that one?
Yeah, look, economic development is a long game, and a lot of work council does. I spoke before about going out tomorrow and servicing the community, but it's also about putting down the foundations for the future. And sometimes it takes years for the community to bear fruit, or the actions to bear fruit. The more immediate things are around, the way we maintain our infrastructure, the presentation of the town, even facilitating housing could arguably be relatively quick. But then we look to things like amending the planning scheme, those other actions which are longer term, putting in place an achievable economic development strategy. You may not see the benefit for 3, 4, 5 years. So I think I'm answering the question in the sense of, yes, there's no instant gratification when it comes to building an economy, building the future. But this is about putting in the foundations, about the legacy of ensuring that we don't come back in 10 years' time and we have a town with poor infrastructure, which looks drab, with poor facilities and has a reputation of not very good reputation.
Thanks very much, Bernard. We have a question from Rihanna, not Rihanna, not our director. Taking into consideration that the SRV is not the only rate rise total on the rates, for example, the waste management fees, this is more than a total of 68%. Is it understood that ratepayers are not the only ones affected? Landlords pass on to tenants. Is it understood that our community is a low-income community with a high rate of pensioners and low to medium income earners? Tenants and residents are going to be highly affected regarding these rises with people. How are you planning on supporting the community long-term in coping with the rate rises? Where are people likely to tighten ropes on needs in their lives, for example, health and electricity? Bernard?
Look, and I think it goes back to the thing which we are acutely aware of, and there was a lot of conversation around it last night, and that this is an impost. It is a significant increase. and that's the simple reality. So we need to weigh that up. We need to look at things like our approach to hardship policy. We need to look at things like, is there a way we can take into consideration the needs of pensioners or the constraints on pensioners? There's no easy answer saying, yep, we've got an answer for that. This is where the decision is very tough for council, and every other, the other 80% of councils in the state which have had a rate variation over the last 10 years, they've been put in the same predicament of building a viable future, but also understanding that there are sections of the community where this will create some difficulty.
Thanks very much, Bernard. One more left from Pioneer. Can the council afford the co-contribution needed with the precinct and partnership grant applied for in relation to the rail trail? Bernard?
Right, we haven't applied for the precinct and partnership grant yet. Where we have applied for another grant, and we're still working on it, but we're trying to be creative. What you can do sometimes is join grants together and come up with a project that's not uncommon. So we've got a strategy in place there to be quite creative as far as putting the funding together, but that's a work in progress.
I think we had one more from Rihanna. Where is that in your plan over the next 3 years? That was a supplementary to her question about people on low income dealing with the cost of living and increase in rates, and I'm not sure what is meant by that. I don't know who would like to have I think we've taken that on board, and we're now getting close to 7:10. So I'm going to call it time on our virtual meeting and just encourage people, if you haven't completed the survey, it's online and hard copy, available at the Town Hall and at the library, online through the Have Your Say Council website. We have another Town Hall meeting face-to-face in Deepwater on the 27th, and our third virtual meeting on the 28th. So if you have any further questions, please use those opportunities. And thank you all very much for participating in this virtual meeting, and good night. Thank you, everyone.
No.